Okay,
So,
ready when you are.
can we get this show on the road here?
There we go.
Okay, so,
Charles is impatient.
Planning Commission meeting for June 13th, 2016 is called to order.
I had to floss my teeth.
Public comments not on the agenda.
Tom, did
Okay,
you
not
want to say
everybody
anything
at once,
about comments
please.
that are not on the agenda?
Okay, seeing no public here, we'll move on to the,
I have something under
Agenda.
communications, but not under
yeah, well,
public comments.
hold your comments.
I am? No.
So item 3A, the Planning Commission is
Or
seeking
Planning
approval.
Division.
Planning Division is seeking
You're leaving the
approval
door
of
open,
a
hopefully somebody will
code
drift in.
interpretation to confirm the standards related to mobile vending food
You want
carts
it on?
and food trucks. Planning file CD 16-01.
No, they won't.
No
Yeah.
changes to the code are proposed. Thank you. Do we have a staff report?
Yes. Do you want to do the reading?
Do I need to read the script before this item?
Yes.
Oh,
But even though there's no one here,
I move that we waive the reading of the script since no one is here.
I second.
But they're watching at home, they'll run over here.
That's
quick.
all right.
well,
It's on the board
I
over
don't know if
there.
we can do that. Can we just read the script? Is
I
that okay?
I think
Are
we
we
can.
allowed
I
to
think
do
we
that?
can
I don't
do
know
it.
if we are allowed
People
to do
out in
that or
TV
not.
land that
I think we can do it.
still
Well,
participate in
I-
in the process.
I would recommend we just read it really fast
Okay, I'll
and
read
then.
it.
Why don't you
quick.
pass
Just
it
keep
around and
at
we'll
it.
all read a
I'll
part
read
of
it
it.
as-
You just read a paragraph.
that would
That's-
take longer.
No, it
You're
wouldn't.
gonna have
Just
to
go
read
for
it
it.
for the second
Okay.
item anyway.
we spent
so
more
you can
time
read it
arguing
once
about
or
what we're
twice.
going to read.
Not
I withdraw
arguing.
my second.
Order. Okay. Public hearing on land use applications are scheduled tonight. A staff report has been prepared for each application and has been made available to the public 7 days before the first public hearing. The staff report identifies the approval criteria that apply to each applicant's proposal. Staff has analyzed the criteria which are contained in the staff report. The quasi-judicial hearing procedure that the commission will follow is set out in state law and the Oregon City Municipal Code. The hearing procedure steps are shown on the chart on the wall. Anyone wishing to speak should fill out a speaker's card and give it to the planning staff before the hearing. Speakers will proceed in the order in which their card is received. You should fill out your address on the card so the city will notify you of its final decision, and you can go ahead and do that right now. For the public record, please begin all testimony stating your name. Testimony and evidence should be directed toward the applicable approval criteria. If you believe other criteria apply in addition to those addressed in the staff report, identify and discuss those criteria and explain how and why you believe they apply to the application under consideration. A person may submit any written material while the public record is open on each application. Any written materials received by the city staff during the time period in which the record is open will be placed in the record. Written materials submitted during the public hearing must be presented to the city staff in order to become part of the record. If a person intends for PowerPoint presentations, oversized poster boards, reports, pictures, or exhibits used in their oral testimony to be placed in the record, copies must be submitted to the city staff while the record is open. If they are not given to the staff, they will not be included in the record. Any person wishing a continuance to present additional evidence or testimony or to keep the record open to respond to new evidence must make that request before the public testimony portion of the hearing is closed. If the Planning Commission makes a decision with which you disagree, any issue that you may wish to appeal must have been raised for the consideration of the City Commission or LUBA or both. Without raising the issue on the record with sufficient specificity and accompanied by statements or evidence that the city and all parties can respond, the issue will not be deemed appealable to the State Land Use Board of Appeals. In addition, the failure of an applicant to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government or its designee to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Does any commissioner have any ex parte conflicts of interest or bias to declare?
With regard to food carts, no.
I have a bias. I like them.
You like them?
Yeah.
Oh, then you're
I
done.
admit.
They're
You'll
delicious.
That will not
recuse-
affect your
you'll have to
ability to
recuse
make
yourself.
a decision in this case, right?
No.
All right.
I'm just going to accuse
None.
myself.
None.
Does
We
anybody
may
in the audience
proceed.
wish to challenge?
Anyone want to challenge this?
Stop.
No, thank you.
Just go through.
All right, thank you very much. Laura Turway, Interim Planning Manager for the City of Oregon City. I'm here to present to you this evening Planning File CD 1601, which is our code interpretation for mobile vending, food carts, and food trucks. The purpose of this code interpretation is to confirm when mobile vending, food carts, and food trucks are allowed in the city. We have had a lot of questions from the public about when these types of development can occur, and so we just wanted to specify using our existing code what circumstances in which food carts are allowed. We're not proposing to change the code at this time, although that is something that we could look into in the future, but at this point we just wanted to have a code interpretation that was approved by the Planning Commission codifying what we think our code says. There's 3 ways in which you can have a food cart within Oregon City. The first one is within an outdoor market. So we have a variety of zoning designations that allow outdoor markets. When there's outdoor markets, there's a general assumption that that will include opportunities for food carts and food trucks as a part of that market. Those markets happen for a finite amount of time. They're generally temporary in nature, and they open and they close. The zoning designations which allow them are listed on the screen, but essentially for most of them in our mixed-use zoning designations, they're permitted outright on the weekends and after 6 p.m. on the weekdays. If they want to be before 6 p.m. on the weekdays, that would require a conditional use permit. As you recall, a few years back, the farmers market for downtown, the farmers market that was in downtown Oregon City came before us for a conditional use permit because they wanted to start before 6 p.m. during the weekdays.
I don't remember that.
So in the commercial zoning designation in the Willamette Falls downtown district, they're just permitted at any time on any day. But in most cases, it's really just evenings and weekends. So that's the first opportunity for food carts.
What if it's not an outdoor market?
So if it's not an outdoor market, you have 2 other options. One is within a special event. So again, special events happen for a limited duration of time. They have a starting point and an end point. They're not always there 100% of the time. A lot of times you'll see them in the right-of-way. This is a picture of First City Festival, but they can also happen on private property as well. Within a special event, you'll start to see a lot of these temporary tents and things like that, and oftentimes you'll see food carts or food trucks. That's okay too. So special events, again, are just temporary finite events where these types of uses come in, the event happens, and then they leave at the end of the day.
Even on private property.
Even on private property. If it's in the right-of-way, you'll need a right-of-way permit, and you would potentially need other permits if it's on private property as well. You may or may not, depending on the case.
So a couple of examples that I assume would fall under special events. A grand opening of something. So it's, grand opening weekend. So Friday at 5 till 8 a.m. Monday or whatever. Or like I know, for instance, Safeway does their, like, it's barbecue time, and they have this special barbecue cookery truck that comes out and shows all their little savories, and it's like a weekend, basically, as opposed to what other places. So that would be a special event that happens occasionally, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, but it's a 48-hour event.
It has a limited duration, and it's not, you can't count on it happening every single weekend is not a special event. Every
Right.
night is not a special event. Exactly right. There is
But once in the summer, once in the winter,
Well, I think what Safeway has been doing. They have their own grill. It wasn't a truck. It's just a big grill. It's under the awning in front of their door, and they're doing barbecued ribs. And actually, Fred Meyer did the same thing. There were no trucks involved. It was
No, there are times when they actually have like a barbecue, like a
Yep.
barbecue
The same-
truck. Yeah.
Yeah.
that comes and does it, and then they do all the cooking and stuff.
Yeah,
But
well,
anyway,
the one they just had last weekend was
Yeah,
the
and they might have
the
modified it. I'm
Safeway
just saying
employees,
that-
and it was part of their
yeah.
function. It
But
wasn't a food
that was
truck
just
part.
an example of somebody who might come in for a discrete 48-hour event and then they're gone.
Damon's
So, Laura-
Mobile Barbecue.
Laura,
would
I don't
be
have any
sure.
personal interest in this, but I know that this came up as an issue after a new downtown business on a corner on Washington Street was having trucks there.
It's not downtown,
Well, it's part of downtown, really,
Not
Washington
really.
Street.
not really.
You know what I'm referring to?
I
Yes.
do.
But my question is, if they had done that not every weekend, but maybe once a month or every other weekend, is that permitted, or is it to try and stop that from occurring
Yeah,
so
permitted.
often? I'm trying to figure out on the basis of a special event. If they had special events every other weekend, would that stop them from doing that? Or is there a limitation on how many times you can hold a special event on a private
I don't
property?
think they're interested in doing it as a special event.
No,
I think they're interested in doing it.
But I'm just wondering, because
Yeah, all the
I felt
time.
like they probably felt we were discriminating against them, since they were the first ones that I had ever noticed doing it. I'm just asking.
Well, they asked for permission and then they were told no, and then they did it anyway.
Well, I'm asking Laura what this means, if it's,
So those are good questions. So just a little background. We get asked this question frequently, and we have for years. And we've been very consistent about conveying what our rules are and when it is allowed. So that is all a good thing. So special events are special. When you start to see a pattern of every other weekend, no, I wouldn't consider that a special event.
Or
That's
every
just
week,
part
every
of,
weekend.
right? That's though that is nice. It's probably not a special event.
I mean,
We-
bars can celebrate a different occasion every special event every other weekend if they wanted to. You know, they come up with all kinds of good reasonings.
It sounds like an outdoor market, right? I mean, at some point you start to transition to another use,
Okay.
right? So when you start to have that, to me, sounds more of like an outdoor market where you're starting to sell things or have food cart pods or something like that, right? So it's starting, there's an event, it ends, it might be often, but you're really looking at the zoning and what that allows. It starts to sound like it's a different zoning designation, not just a building with something that happens occasionally on a special event. We did go through a pre-app. We've had a few pre-apps. We did have a pre-app with the business that you're referring to. And so these are the times when food carts can be allowed. In that particular case, they submitted to have one there 100% of the time. So we went through our code and looked at what are the standards that apply, right? So site plan design review, we have things like transparency, building orientation, things like that. And those were sort of the stumbling blocks for having a food cart there all of the time. That's why it's nice when you have these special events, because for 2 hours you're not doing a site plan design review and requiring a certain amount of transparency on a food truck. But it starts to get trickier when we start to have them as buildings and require them to meet building-like features. And so that is something that is achievable, but there are barriers. And that's probably why we don't see a lot of them. But
Is there a limitation on how many times a private business could hold a special event? Okay, it's Mickey Mouse's birthday next week, and it's 2
Minnie
weeks from now
Mouse.
it's Donald Duck's birthday, or it's this occasion, it's the honorary Irish thing, it's the honorary. I mean, is there a limitation on how often you can hold one?
our code does not have a specific number that limits how often a special event is special. So it is up to the interpretation of the department. And I that can be a really good thing, right? Because I think there's a lot of factors involved, right? How long of time of day. So that would be a decision. Those decisions can be appealable through the process, right?
You guys have a permit process for special events that they apply for and goes to the fire and the police and you
That was my
guys
next
and-
question, if there's a fee to have a
Yeah.
special event.
Is there a
So
business
there's
license?
some kind of internal coordination that you guys do with those special events that govern the time and duration of the special event, and then probably the food trucks as well, right?
So if you're in the right-of-way, you'll need a right-of-way permit. There is a special event permit for events in the right-of-way that is always required when an event involves the right-of-way. That goes through our Development Services Department and gets coordinated by our city recorder.
Right.
If you're not within the right-of-way, then you do have to coordinate with our city recorder recorder, and sometimes there are special events permits that are required. Sometimes there are not.
On private property.
On private property. The city in general, I believe, is looking at that process to sort of streamline that a little bit more. But so the answer is the worst answer I'm sure you want to hear, which is sometimes.
Or it's
So
kind
you
of-
check, everyone checks with our city recorder, and they'll direct them to the processes as needed.
Is there a business license required?
Not for a special event. Technically, our business licenses says if you do anything in the city, they'll need a business license. I don't believe we see them very much for special events. If you are selling something in the city, though, technically you're supposed to have a business license. So we have seen business licenses from things like, vendors at these type of events.
What about at a restaurant, you'll see a health certification?
So with the business licenses, yeah, you have to post or have on file your business license approval.
What about
Carts.
for health reasons? They're
Groups have to
selling
have
food.
food. They
Mhm.
have
Do
to-
they get regulated through the
There's
health
food
department with the
licenses.
county?
They
Food
do get
handlers.
regulated through other jurisdictions, just not through the city. So
You
yes,
have
they'll,
to get a license to dispense food.
yes, and they'll make sure that they have all the food handlers permits and all of that as well.
Washing
So what about
stations,
ice cream
soap,
trucks?
whole 9 yards.
So ice cream trucks, we have done business licenses for ice cream trucks in the right of way.
Yeah.
So they stay in the right of way, and it would be like a day special event.
Okay.
But because they don't the food is prepackaged, they don't have to have, yes, they do have to have a food handler's
Yeah.
license, because even if it's packaged, they ask you that on the
Mobile
application.
vendor.
Do you guys do the ones that visit the workplaces, like the ones that
The roach
make the,
coaches.
weekly or
Roach
daily,
coaches.
twice daily routes?
Should, like the
Yes.
Mountain Man. I forget
There's
what
Mountain Man, and then there's all these other people that come
Oh,
by.
Mountain Man's had a business license in Oregon City for years,
Come by the the businesses with
He came to our
lunch, with
office,
a little bit of breakfast,
which is how we know.
and then lunch. The food truck,
They are required to have business licenses at the city.
but they can't operate. They can do that here.
If you're doing like a lunch truck every lunch period to a business, then that does not sound like a special event.
It
So
requires a business license.
Well, no, they're asking whether or not it's a.
But I know
This
you
is
got a
either-
good business license. I just want to know if it's allowed in the city to do, if you can do that.
not if it's consistent, right? It starts to fall
Yeah.
out of that special event.
Like
So
I buy my food truck and I want to go visit like Red Soils and all the different,
You're
business places.
You're
have
doing
to route.
business in the city, so
And-
you need a business license.
That's not what I'm asking.
Nobody has asked about.
no, so it wouldn't. So you would either be
You,
you'd have to fall under a
It's
market
Yeah.
or a special event or the Willamette Falls downtown district. So it's not in a market. So then the only opportunity it has is if it's in a special event, and if it's every day at lunch, that doesn't sound like a
Could
special
your
event.
special event be a
windows.
rolling special event, a la an ice cream truck, so that you're able to cruise through the parks in Oregon City and ice cream?
Well, so if you have a ice cream truck that goes once 1 week or however often
Say
every
once a
summer,
month. Yeah.
then you could start to look at special events, right? Because it's not going down every single road, every single day, it is more of a special event. So you're right, there is interpretation on this.
Yeah, the one that's,
okay.
the guy that.
Laura, I don't know how you keep all this in your head. There's so many angles to all this. But back to my question about some of the businesses who had requested this. I can see that you're not going to make any changes at this time. Are some of those businesses still requesting, or have they given up on the whole idea, or are they still asking for some changes to the rules?
There is a variety of options that are available to them. The one in particular that you're referring to, I have worked with them, and what they're going to do, from my understanding, is just have a counter on the inside of the building. You could even bring a food truck into the inside of a building, although I think they're just having a counter where they sell the
They
food.
do have a garage door that
But
Yes.
according to our building official, you can remove the gas and the fumes and have certain different things where you can start to bring some of these type of food trucks into a building, and then you're no longer on the exterior. So that is a way sort of around these exterior planning requirements. As long as you can sell food in the zoning designation, you can do that. You can have a counter while you give food, or you can roll the truck into the building and dispense food that way as well.
So reading- sorry.
There's two situations I can think of where one went to a counter and the other one is working on a ventilation system and different things that they have to do to the truck to modify it to sort of roll it in for a week and then they maybe transfer it out to another truck the next week. So there are options.
Yeah, that's
Did I-
the big question is if they move it into a building and they're actually cooking in their food truck, which a lot of them do, you can't do that in an enclosed building without having some sort of, like you say,
That's what she
ventilation
said.
system, because that could be like a major fire hazard.
Yeah,
So everything is very closely coordinated with our building department.
with the fire marshal.
So is there a reason, an overarching reason why we're not permissive to food trucks?
We just haven't updated our code. It takes a lot to update our code, and we haven't. In general, there were a few years where we updated our code quite a bit. So we did it initially in 2004. We essentially rewrote our whole code, and we came up with these mixed-use zones. And it wasn't on the forefront of our mind then. And since then, we revisited the code in 2009, 2010, and then just for our transportation system plan in 2014. So it's been a while, and it's hard to update our code. It's very expensive with the public processes and notification. And when we open it up, we sort of say, oh, this is our chance. It's been so long, and we want to make lots of changes. And so it ends up being a very large endeavor. So the only reason why we haven't changed our code is we're not totally sure if there is a will to change the code, where the money is coming from to change the code, and if we have the staff to change the code. So we have no opinion of changing the code at this time, although I did make a note for when we do change the code of coming back and revisiting this issue to see if there is a desire to change it. Many people can change the code. The public can change the code. Staff can change the code. At this time, we've not been directed to change the code from our commission, the city commission. But any citizen can also initiate a legislative file to change the code. And that was what the path we were walking down with the applicant that Commissioner Guile was referring to, was for them to initiate a code change.
So I noticed that you have up on the screen next to Willamette Falls, and I presume that was already existent in the code when the code was created, that if there's a Willamette Falls district downtown, we'll allow this usage down there? Is that, because that's something new, the Willamette Falls downtown district, isn't it?
It is.
But yeah, I
So-
know, that's what I know, but I'm wondering, how long ago was the code made that this was included in it?
You were here when we did it.
It's a part of the code adoption process.
know.
So when the Willamette Falls Master
Plan.
Framework Plan was adopted, they did a legislative file to adopt our zoning code to create the Willamette Falls Downtown District, and within that, they did a list of permitted uses, which included mobile vending.
Yeah.
So it is a permitted use outright, but
So that's separate of the other code.
so it's all within our chapter or title 17 of our code, but there's a but, and it's a big but. You can't just start rolling in carts and doing this type of use there now. Within the framework plan, everything is going to come back to you guys, the planning commission, until they start to refine the plan. So though it's a permitted use, we don't have any standards or processes. We don't know.
It's a comp plan concept.
Yeah, so it's just a large, big picture idea. But if they want to move towards food carts as an interim use or a permanent use, or food pods or things like that, as they start to narrow down that plan, they'll have to come back to you before they can actually start doing anything on site.
So as Charles can tell you, I mean, I visited them downtown during the Rose Festival. There's carts on every other corner, it seems. Do you have plans, or in that concept plan, I don't remember, was there a limitation on how many you can have downtown in the Willamette district? One per block or anything like that, but not a whole pod of them?
The only thing that we have plans is that mobile vending is listed as a permitted use at this time. So
I see.
that is a good
Okay.
question
Yeah.
and something that they'll have to identify an answer to as we move through that process. But
Okay.
we're not there quite yet,
All right.
but a good question.
Just a lot of questions I've had. Thanks.
Yes, all good questions.
Now, this may have been covered before, but the duration of a special event, if they're allowed during a special event, does a special event go on for a week, 10 days?
Summer.
all summer, right, you know, that kind of stuff. You got a concentrated use there, which is combined from 15 different businesses.
The Pioneer
What
Festival
kind
is
of
3 days.
impact might that have on traffic, you know, public
Yeah, they
safety,
have- they have,
crosswalks,
Vendors. down there,
fire,
so-
yada, yada, yada? In other words, how long are we gonna let them stay there?
Yes.
As the word mobile means mobile, that means you're gonna move sometime, when? You know, that kind of stuff. Pretty soon you become a permitted use or a permanent use, you know? And so that would concern me, you know, how many we're gonna allow to accumulate in an area, following up on Tom's thought there.
It's a good point. It's all part of this application of our zoning code. There's all these little discretionary decisions that come about, and
It's
it
gonna be tough.
usually depends on the circumstances and what they're doing and how often and how long. And but you're right, exactly. At some point, it becomes either an outdoor market or some other type of use.
A quasi permanent outdoor market. Couldn't that be controlled through the business license application? Thou shalt not occupy this area for any duration beyond such and such a time.
I think
Yeah,
that's
and
planning,
we've
isn't it?
addressed a lot of mobile vendors through code enforcement because sometimes we'll see the business has a business license and then they just want to expand to allow a mobile food cart, and maybe it's the same business, so they have the same business license and they don't come back and amend their business license, say, oh, by the way, we're going to do this. Either ideally they've asked us ahead of time and we've informed them of the rules ahead of time, or if not, then we go through the code enforcement process to let them know what the rules are. So that's what happened with one that we did have within the city. There was just a truck that just started showing up, you know, after everybody went home at night or on the weekends, and so we had to address it because it was showing up
People called, not
all
me.
the time or a consistent amount of time, and it didn't consider some of our zoning code.
You know, if they're left there overnight, they could act as an attractive nuisance for vandalism and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, you know, you gotta safeguard against that, because your police department's gonna be called upon to do a drive-by all the time to make sure that things are secure, and especially if, you know, against vandalism and graffiti and that kind of stuff. I hate to throw up these
We're
flags.
starting to do little pods.
So I have a question, just to back up a little bit. So what part of the code I didn't see that in your staff report nor in the memo. What are we interpreting? Allowed uses or conditional uses in specific zones? Because didn't say anywhere in this, you know, we're seeking a code interpretation.
So the code interpretation is to identify when food carts, mobile vending units are allowed in the city.
And that's in the section that you showed in the little
That-
box?
The timetable.
Title 17 is.
Yeah,
that
so
the-
when
Yeah, no, I
mobile-
know it's in Title 17.
That's the thing, is that we don't have it specifically identified. All we say is markets, and that's why we need this code
Okay.
interpretation
Well,
to
that
really
would have
back up.
been, I would have maybe put that in your report saying, this is what we're looking at, this is what we are interpreting, because, you know, like you said, I knew there wasn't anything in there that said
It's true.
mobile food carts, but I didn't know what we were trying to interpret. So
You know-
so I guess the other thing I have a question about is that being more familiar than I ever wanted to be familiar with is the ones in Portland. There was a situation where a client we were working with at PDC thought they were following all the city's rules, so they, you know, have a paved lot, they've got the garbage enclosure, they've got all the stuff that they needed to do to site the cart on their property, and then they found out, you know, well, oh, you forgot about standard B, C, D, E, and F. So I know that the requirements for food carts in Portland are, I would say that they're stringent, but I think, you know, what I do know about them helps them be better. I mean, my biggest gripe about them is that some of them look like they just found an abandoned trailer and then, you know, put wheels on it and then, you know, dumped it somewhere. And I don't know if people go up and down McLaughlin regularly, but right before you get to where
Johnson Creek.
there's right where the railroad, entrance into to to the yard there. Somebody's been working on a mobile food cart. It's on the it's on the Eastmoreland side. It's wood. I mean, they've been it's been over like 6-7 months now. I've been watching it every time I go to see how much more they've got done. I mean, and they're actually doing a really nice job. It's very nice looking. You know, it's not just a little travel trailer that somebody converted. So I'm presuming they're going to want to move it. And so the other question I had was, so we're probably talking about some sort of design standards eventually. And then are we looking at them being permanent somewhere, or are they still movable? And, again, I think that's where the design standards would come in, is they're going to be permanent. But they still have to have the ability to be wheeled away, if something happens, like, flooding or some, act of God thing that happens. But so down there, I mean, that's something I'm just asking the guys here, is that something that we are going to be, do you think we will be looking at that down the road?
Well, I think that's what we're talking about, is whether or not we get to that spot. And I would encourage other commissioners to not just look at this as an isolated ordering food at your favorite place to drink beer. We're talking about traffic and economic development and all sorts of things, because I, like many other people, probably leave Oregon City to go to their favorite restaurant. And if we had more good places to eat, more people would not leave, which is less traffic. And some of the best restaurants in Portland came from food carts. So Koi Fusion, Lardo, they all started out as food carts, and now they're thriving restaurants with excellent ratings. So it's not just whether or not we should have a food cart and it's here and it's gone. It's everything else that goes with it.
Well, Zach, you obviously haven't been downtown lately. We've had a number of restaurants open, and I'll give you a list after we're off the record, because
do.
I'm
always looking for something.
I've been to
try.
several of them, so you don't have to leave town.
But I do like chicken wings.
So I can talk to the development standards a little bit. So for food carts, you can, if you put them in a building, it's not an issue. So there's that avenue. If they're exterior, you can still have them if you go through our site plan design review criteria. So the Coffee Rush up by Safeway is actually a food cart, but it's integrated into it went through site plan design
It's
review
a permanent
to go
kiosk.
through our design standards. So that's one where you'll saw a successful application of a food cart, but it still meets our code, right?
Food cart by Safeway?
No, it's
It's
not.
the coffee
That's not
stand.
a food. that-
It's not
It's
mobile.
skirted on the bottom.
No,
Yeah,
no,
but I mean, it's
No,
now
permanent.
a permanent.
It's
I beg to
permanent.
differ. You're,
Yeah,
you're,
it's
you're
permanent.
mistaken. That was originally a bank.
No, we're talking about the one in the Safeway shopping center. There's
No,
a coffee
she's talking
rush.
about the Coffee Rush. The
Coffee-
Coffee Rush that's out in the middle of the parking lot was originally a bank.
So it was
That was
No.
never a food cart.
when they redid the Safeway, they redid that building at the
I know,
same
and
time.
It was permitted when
originally
I
a bank.
was
It
working
was
at
not
the
a food
stand.
cart.
So
No, it wasn't.
so they
No, it
demolished that building and then they
Yes.
did this new building as a
Building, yes.
replacement.
Right, but when
So
that-
this is a new
But
building.
it's never been a food cart. It was either a bank
Well,
or.
no. She's saying
This
the-
new building,
as it was built kind of as a cart.
it
with
was a food cart that
with a-
got transferred into a building.
It was never a food cart.
No.
I
well,
guarantee-
I'll follow up on that.
I've
Guys.
gone, I used to bank there.
Can
No,
I?
okay.
No.
I
Can
will
I ask
follow
you
up
one
on
more?
it. I'll send you
I've
guys
got
an
another
email.
point before we get into. So one of the issues that I see with food carts in Oregon City is that Oregon City is not a pedestrian-oriented community yet. And the thing that makes food carts successful in Portland, Zach, as you know, people don't drive to them; they walk to them. We do not have the cluster of people that are people who go down to the at 14th and Washington. They all drive there pretty much. Their parking lot is full. They are not walking there. So if you have which is why I kind of have an issue right now with whether or not we could support it, because there's not a lot of walking traffic where you'd have a cluster where you. I mean, I went to them all the time when I was in Portland too, but we walked there. We're walking to the food.
I think that's for the market to decide.
It's chicken
Well,
and egg.
it is, but I mean, that's really what makes them successful. You're not. They don't have.
that option for the
They
market.
don't have parking. You're not going to be driving to a food cart.
Denise, that gets right to my point. And that is, how permanent do you want these things to be?
That's
We
good.
say mobile here. Mobile means moving.
They can move.
How often do we how
Well-
often do we want them to move?
I'll just, let me weigh in. I've been observing the food cart
Phenomena.
phenomena in downtown Portland. And when I first started working down there, there were virtually none. I don't remember any of them. But they gradually popped up,
They're like
and
two.
usually they'd pop up like one on a corner.
Yeah.
And then they started breeding, and pretty soon there was a whole
They're like hangers.
a whole blank.
They just multiply.
But here's the truth of the matter is, once they're set up, they never move. And most of them, the tires have gone flat. They would have to be reconditioned and rehabilitated to move. They may look like a truck, they may look like a food cart, but they never go anywhere. They
Unless the
always
parking
are
lot
parked
gets
there.
sold, and then they move.
And I would just, I eat at these food carts. Most of it's good, delicious food. But the one thing I would just point out is in my opinion, it's an image thing. City of Portland is completely inconsistent on this issue. They have stringent regulations for buildings. If you're going to build a permanent building, they look at every nut and bolt that's exposed on the outside of that building, and I'm serious about that.
No, you're
if
right.
you put panels on the outside of the building, they look at how the panel is fastened to the building.
Yes, they do.
Okay, but you can put the trashiest looking food cart out there, and if it meets the health standards, they're okay with that. And not only that, they're okay with it directly across the street from the planning department,
Yeah.
an entire block.
And I had the trashier the better. Probably.
It's unbelievable. So I would submit it's not just, I agree, it's a matter of business.
Yeah.
And it's, like I said, some of the best food in town is at a food cart. But it's also a matter of image. Is that the image that we want to have in Orchard City? And I would also put another caveat. There's permanent restaurants or built restaurants in brick and mortar buildings that I would submit they're teetering between being successful and not successful. And I don't know how many of those businesses would continue to be viable if a block down the street there were 4 or 5 food carts competing with them. And I think that's another element we have to consider, is that if you're allowing somebody to have a virtually no overhead operation, working side by side with other businesses that have to meet all the building codes with regard
Yeah, it's a
to
disadvantage.
site design, it's not a level playing field.
And the SDC
Yeah.
element.
Exactly.
So if
So
I
you-
can
You gotta pay all.
bring up one other issue, and regarding some things that look like food carts, but they're permanent, like a lot of coffee stands that are around the city. Yet there's no seating inside, yet everything's out the window. So that to me is almost a food cart, even though it may be looking like a building. For instance, I was coming down Main Street. It's more than once. I have my business down there on Main Street. The other day, it was to get to the corner of 7th or
How
10th.
long did it take you? 20 minutes?
It was, the line up to turn around the corner there at Dutch Brothers was 2 blocks down, and people couldn't turn the corner because people were blocking the intersection there, coming off 99. 99 was blocked off. I don't know what planning commission approved that, but that is such a mess of that intersection because whoever designed the way traffic was going to go in there. But again, it was down from 10th all the way down to 8th and almost reaching to 7th to get around the corner, because people were lined up there to get into Dutch Brothers. And I hope that if we
You
do
mean
have...
the one in the...
No, the one right
at
here
the
on
bottom.
10th,
Oh, the one
at the bottom on Main
yeah,
Street.
that used to be the bank.
Yeah, and it's so small, and the traffic. So I know if we do this as part of the Willamette Falls, I'm hoping that we think about traffic and what it can do. You say some of them are walk-ups. That's a drive-up there.
No, but food carts in Portland, you don't drive up to them.
Yeah.
They're pedestrian oriented.
But that's why I brought up the fact that this is not on wheels, but it's kind of a permanent fixtured building. But boy, it plays havoc on the traffic on Main Street and on 10th Street coming off 99. And to me, that's a kind of a food cart style.
That's got an impact on the public in this city within that minimum of a quarter of a mile.
Yeah.
And it deals with public safety in the form of traffic.
And the coming down the hill for the train, they have signs, do not stop on the tracks, because you get stuck there.
So with new food carts, we would go through the site
Traffic.
plan design review process in our as our current code stands, we have site plan design review that's required for new things in buildings and food carts included. So they would look at traffic studies and things like that. So.
My turn. I've been
Oh, no, Damon, we're done.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So, most of my concerns other people have voiced. I mean, I think the key is about it being carts or mobile or whatever, is that I think should there be a standard at some point for pods or whatever, that there be a requirement that they demonstrate their mobility on a certain regular basis, whether it's because we're about to flood or whether it's to avoid them becoming a de facto restaurant. I mean, it's not brick and mortar, it just happens to be, sheet metal. But, if it can't move, it's become a building.
It's become brick and mortar.
And therefore, it either needs to meet building standards or it needs to meet mobility standards. Also, I don't think there should be necessarily a prohibition against, and I'm just going to say it because in LA they're all over the place, and that's what we call them, the roach coach on a route. If they come and go within 30 minutes, and I know that some of the large construction companies actually employ them to come to their different construction sites to feed their people so they don't have to come down and go out and try to find something to eat or whatever. That I think that almost should fall under a currently permitted use. I mean, it's just somebody parking.
But it's still they're doing business in Oregon City.
I understand that, and having a business license is different than just because they happen to be handing food out the back of their truck instead of T-shirts or whatever. I think that almost gets to the censorship. You don't get to look at the sign, only what the activity is, and it's a sale of a product. So.
Sounds like you're saying this would be a special event because it's for an hour, even though it's every day or something like that, right?
Or, in most cases, they're 15, 20 minutes because they got to get to their next place, and then they got to hit like 5 places during the lunch hour and then, the breakfast hour. And I have never seen any at dinner unless they were called in by the company.
And they do serve a purpose for that construction company.
Yeah, and they don't necessarily compete because most of those show up in places where you have to travel to someplace. I mean, they compete with the person who brought their lunch, as opposed, because we have campus industrial, and potentially we'll have large amounts of campus industrial up by the high school. And, having a, food cart or van or whatever roll in for 20 minutes between 3 or 4 industrial warehouses and having people come and go isn't necessarily competing with anybody. I mean, potentially there's other buildings and stuff, but again, it's people that have to get in their cars and go somewhere, which is a traffic issue. As far as the pods, my experience with the pods, in particular, I'll use the Pioneer Square one, is that it's a driving traffic hazard because people will drive a half a mile an hour along the street trying to find their pod, and there's that cart there, and how long is the line, and they're looking there and not there. And then when they see it, if the line's short, I've seen people ram their car into park, leap out, get their order, double parked, and come back and jump in their car. Like they'll give the order, and they'll go around the block, and then they'll jump out, grab it, and get back in their car.
Wow.
So,
you think it's that fast?
Well, they may take a couple laps, but I've seen people do that. Now I don't know necessarily whether their buddy bought the food but I've seen people put their car in park, abandon it, and then run back out with food, jump in their car, and drive off. So that one in particular, I haven't seen it like in some of the others, but
That's not the cart's fault, though.
no. but it gets to location and traffic management. And yeah, the Portland police could just put a cop there and go, oop, hey, and by the time the guy gets back, his car's being towed off down the road. Or just get
There's
the
a-
right criminal
there's a-
element standing there and their car drives off.
Yeah.
But that gets to location and access, which is something that if we
It's not there
pod
permanently,
is going to be
Because I was just there
something we
Sunday.
really
There
need
was no food
to
cart
consider.
5 years ago.
It's
It does seem we need to delineate between mobile food service trucks and carts.
yeah, because like this example you have here of the little 3-wheeled
Bicycle.
Italian ice cart or whatever. That's somebody that's just he's just going down there. He's like the ice cream truck. Boop, boop, boop. Somebody flags him down. He stops, does his thing, and moves on down the road.
Well, that looks like he's at a park.
Well, still, he's probably fairly mobile, and he's, so that's the difference I'd say between carts and
So does McLaughlin Neighborhood have a
Cars.
special permit to do that?
For all of these things, they
Are you
either have to
down at
be
the,
a special event
the trail center?
in a market or in Willamette Falls.
Yeah.
Knowing
Concerts in the
we can't do the
park. Yes,
Willamette
we
Falls
have.
one, and they're generally not in markets, so we're down to the special event one. Is it the opinion of the commission that if it's somewhere for less than an hour, that it is a special event, even though it's every day, like the lunch truck?
I think we're stretching the term special event. I'm right now. It's not permitted under the code. I'm willing to acknowledge that.
Okay,
I'm just saying that when the code starts to get revised,
okay.
that those short, if you're there for 30 minutes or less, that it's
And who's going to be timing that?
well
30
somebody
minutes
will
or less,
it
but if
pisses
you're
them.
there consistently 30 minutes or less, that's not a special
No,
event.
that's
Right,
not, no, I
right.
totally
Yeah.
agree
Just
with you.
clarify.
Yeah, no,
what
I'm not
was
trying.
there.
I'm not trying to stretch that definition by
No,
any means. I'm just
I
saying
think
in the
Damon's
future.
talking about something
Right.
that is not a special event, but is probably a viable activity because it's serving a niche within the business market that is not being fulfilled by a brick and mortar restaurant because they need that service right there at that location.
Yeah.
And I know, especially for construction sites, it's
Well-
not practical for all the construction workers to jump up and go to a restaurant and get back because they usually have a limited amount of time for lunch.
Or they can't leave because they're waiting for the cement truck.
Yeah.
So everybody's just.
I just wanted to clarify that you're
No,
not
I am
applying
not
that
at
for
all
this.
trying to
Okay.
Well, let me
stretch
give you a
that.
good,
The
let me
thing
give you a
is-
good example. So before there was that's a parking lot that's across the street. Those pod will be gone when somebody figures out they can make enough money to build a building across from the 1900 building. But when I first started working in the 1900 building, a woman had a Korean barbecue cart. Tuesdays, she was in front of our building for an hour and a half. Then she went to Albers Mill on Wednesdays for an hour and a half, and then she was at another location. She had a place every
She had a
day
route.
of the week that she was there, but she wasn't there for 30 minutes. You could go out, and there would be a 2-hour niche, and she got a permit from the city of Portland. It looked pretty much like this one on the lower half here. That's about what her
The
cart
Ebbets
looked like.
truck.
The Ebbets truck. It's about what it looked like. And she just, prominently displayed her food license, her city permit, and she, ran around. So now I will say the exception to that rule was one day we all decided we wanted the barbecue. So I carpooled everybody down to Albers Mill. We pulled up in their parking lot, went to the food cart, got the food, and then drove back to our office because we knew where she was going to be. But there was off-street parking. She pulled in like their turnaround. That's where she was at the 1900 building before they got rid of that little driveway.
And there are-
So people, they do still do that. But there was a little mobile food cart, probably twice the size of the little one on wheels, that was Saigon Kitchen. That was the first one up by us. And then, like you say, boom, overnight.
Well, in Portland, there's ones just like that where there's a big box truck with a lift gate, and it goes around the city and drops them off, little eggs or something.
That's what Saigon Kitchen does. Yeah.
And they have you have to have an arrangement with the site host essentially.
Yes.
Yeah, those some
Yeah.
burrito carts that do
Yeah.
the same
Yeah,
thing.
Saigon Kitchen has one at the park right across from City Hall. They were up by the 1900 building. They're at the Portland building, and it's a very small little cart. Like I said, it's about maybe twice the size of that. Like you'd
Well,
walk
the
into a
difference with
closet.
those is that they come and go every day.
They do. They come and go every
The
day.
ones that look like the
Yes.
Ebbets one that are parked in downtown Portland, they sit there literally for years
Yeah.
without moving.
There's a couple of
To
them
the
that are
point
like
where
that.
pretty soon the tires are flat, and in order to level them up, they put blocks underneath. And
It's scary.
So,
So now they have a foundation, so now they're,
Yeah.
Hey, Charles, that looks to me like a health hazard. Some of that stuff
well,
around
and
there.
I'm not even
it is.
commenting about the healthiness or the quality of the food. That's between the health department. I'm just saying, again, that the city has design standards for buildings. And so they're pretending like it's a food cart when in fact it's become a building.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
they
why
regulate them as cars.
Yeah.
And so they have the
That's why
standard
I'm
for
saying
them
we
as
need to have a
cars.
mobility standard in
Yeah.
that says every 90 days they have to go drive around the block on their own power, not be towed, something like that that demonstrates their mobility. And if it's like the whole pod picks up and moves, it's not a big disruption, whatever the case may be. But I think to prevent that, because, we had our 100-year flood twice in 30 years. Who knows what's going to happen with,
Exactly.
the big one and the Mount St. Helens and all those other things. And, and maybe the person develops the land and it's like, we don't want 3 abandoned vehicles left in their property because the person let it rot so much the engine won't turn over. And they don't care. They're going to walk away from it because it was a found cart to begin with or
Yeah,
whatever.
there's a pod out in the Gateway area, and I can tell you that based solely on how schleppy it looks, I don't really want to eat there.
Yeah.
But then there's one now at the Mercado where there are little stalls that people have that's permanent. That's in Lentz off of 72nd, Southeast 72nd and Foster. The Mercado is actually not a food cart pod, but it's a small business incubator where people are, selling their food, but they're there permanently, and there's a kitchen, and everybody has use of the kitchen.
Right.
So it's
and I do think there's a model for that.
yes,
You don't necessarily have to have these
schleppy looking carts.
roach coaches that happen to sit there and be parked for months and years. I guess my question is, Laura, are you looking for a motion from us or some kind of?
Bob had a question though.
I look at this vehicle here taking up a parking space. Now, that's a mobile food cart by definition.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
now,
mostly a food truck.
he's going to take up a parking space.
Two.
He's going to be on a public right-of-way. He's going to affect traffic, sight distance clearance, and what have you. On one side, he's got the access to the public sidewalk, which is going to be his source of business. I know that when I go downtown Oregon City and I park, I feed the meter. That tells me I got X number of minutes to be at that parking space. I've got to move or I'm going to get a ticket. It would seem to me if we're going to allow this type of thing on a public thoroughfare that's going to affect traffic, that you say, okay, you've got X number of hours, you've got X number of days
2
to be
hours.
there. And other than that, once that expires, you're gone.
Exactly
But
right.
Bob, this is not the situation that I'm talking about.
No, I know that.
The
I know that.
situation I'm talking about is a parking lot that got converted into a row of food
Mhm.
carts.
Yeah.
Food
And
carts.
they're
with
not
parking
taking
in
up
the back.
public right of way.
Right.
They're actually probably on private property.
But there will be cases when the food cart will ask the city to have
Then they have to have a right-of-way permit.
use the public thoroughfare.
exactly.
Right.
And we've got to, because of public safety, we've got to, and traffic control and things of that nature. And I think the Traffic Advisory Committee would be interested in looking at this for public safety.
We get
Like we talked about the other day, I think that would be a legitimate role. In terms of land use, that's ours, but my point being is that in order to keep these things mobile so that they don't become permanent, and get the idea that they've got permanent occupancy in a public right of way, is that they've got to have some means by which they have to move on.
Yep.
I know I have to move on when it expires.
Do you foresee somebody doing that? Somebody pulling up in downtown and taking up multiple parking spaces to have a food
Well, I'm
truck?
a
Yes,
We have
I do.
received, so we would require right-of-way permits for this situation, and we have received applications and approvals for right-of-way permits, so it's this special event.
No, I
certain
mean
amount
like
of
just
time.
on a regular I mean, not for a special event where the street's closed off, but where somebody comes in and it's Monday through Friday and they pull up in their food truck, park it in front of Liberty Plaza, plug the meter. I mean, do you
Not right now,
do you
but in
foresee
Willamette
for you
Falls
foresee
area.
foresee that? Yeah, I'm talking about downtown. I'm not talking about Willamette Falls.
Yeah.
I mean, is that something you guys foresee? That's kind of what I'm hearing you say, Bob. Is that you're saying that that might happen?
I own one of those things.
Right.
Okay? If I thought I'd get away with it, you betcha. You betcha. If I could make some money occupying a public parking space because people, with just a land office business, wouldn't you, Tom?
Yeah.
If you were a businessman?
Yeah.
Sure.
Anything
So there's
I
got to
can
be
do.
some control
There
over
should be a
it.
50
designated
cents.
area for them or something.
Pardon me?
A designated area for them.
Yeah, but not only a
it's-
designated area, but a designated
parts.
time.
Yeah.
The city's got to be able to control that and say, listen, it's not in the public interest to block the sight distance clearance at an intersection or what have you. We're going to duplicate the Dutch Brothers again, you see. We're going to access them by the sidewalk now, not just by the public right-of-way. So you got to plan for the weakest link, and the weakest link is the success of a business that says, aha, this is my place now. I'm going to take it over. And the city's got to control that.
So Bob, if I could sell caskets out of the back end of my hearse on Main Street, I would.
Sure, yeah. And I wouldn't blame you for trying, I wouldn't blame you for trying.
So let's look at concluding this discussion. Are we
If I may.
going to be putting together a motion here?
I was just going to say I move approval of the planning department's current interpretation of Title 17 in relation to food carts and vending.
I second.
What did
Planning file CD 1601.
Yes.
All right.
Which is basically the little chart you put out.
Not always.
Okay, so we're talking about Roman numeral number 3, the conclusion and recommendation.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, so before you take the vote, let's
Yeah.
just repeat for the public's purpose, what is it that we are recommending?
thank you.
You want to go to pull up the chart?
So it would be approval of our code interpretation, which identifies that mobile food vending, carts.
Is that on page 2 of the staff report?
Yes.
What were the other options?
2 and 3.
So for mobile vending, food carts, and food trucks, you can be allowed in one of 3 circumstances in Oregon City. One is within an outdoor market. Outdoor markets are permitted or conditional uses depending on the time of day and these zoning designations shown on the screen. So option 1, outdoor market. Option 2, special event. Special event could be in the right of way or on private property. Permits may be needed for those.
But it is of limited duration.
Of limited duration, exactly.
Okay, that's good, limited duration.
And here we have alternatively the city could change the code.
So the third one is Willamette Falls District, but we know you can't actually roll up and start doing that right now. There's more work to be done. So that's our code now. If anyone wants to change it, they're welcome to initiate a legislative review process. I've made a note for when we start to change our code to look at this issue as well, but we're not proposing to change it right now.
So let's say that I want to plan a big blowout for my 30th birthday, and I want to hire a food vendor to come and drive onto my driveway on my property and serve food to my guests for a private party, not open to the public. But by the way, you'd all be invited.
That would be okay.
So what sort of permit would I need to get?
So it's through our city recorder's office. There's some circumstances on private property that you would need permits, like we do film permits kind of thing. Like,
Right.
so there are certain cases and there are certain properties that are identified that if they do anything like that, that we would have permits because there's some existing
Well, I'm
joint
in a
agreements.
residential zone,
So probably none.
but it's a private party.
Yep, but you'd still have noise ordinances and things
Yeah.
like that. Mm-hmm.
It'd be quiet food.
Why through the city recorder's office and not the planning?
They're just
be
the ones
true.
that coordinate all of the special events like filming and things like that. So we do work with them, but they're the ones that dispense the permits. We were looking at starting to a project, although we're short on staff time, so we didn't proceed with it, to come up with a more formalized special event on private property procedure and criteria. But so maybe that you'll see that in the future.
Can we call for the question?
So,
What's a TV?
would you like to amend your motion
Yeah,
to
it's
say, to include pages 2 and 3, the table
In the staff report?
from the staff report?
No, because
It includes.
that shows how the city staff has interpreted Title 17
Okay.
with relation to food carts. So that my motion is that we concur with city staff's definition of Title 17 in relation to food carts.
Okay.
All right, ready for a roll?
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Henkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff?
I will say reluctantly yes, because I'm still not sure what the definition is of a special event, as it was pointed out by somebody else.
Commissioner Guile?
Yes.
Chair Kidwell?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I don't want to see somebody take advantage of that.
Sure.
Any sense for the timeline of when we might look at this code?
Any day you're open is a
Of
special
creating a
event.
code for
That's
food
been
carts?
closed for 3 weeks now.
No idea.
The sign's up today.
I wish I knew.
Because you're on the record, right?
I'm-
So we have
I
time
wish
to
I
go
had
and
that
hope
for you,
it'll
but I
be
don't.
open.
I think it should be something probably within the next 18 months, though, based on interest and impetus and inertia.
And I look
So,
forward to that
We'll
conversation.
move forward to item 3B, request for, to continue annexation file AN 16-0001 for the property located at 19358 South Columbine Court to July 11th, 2016.
And since you already read all of the legal spiel, I just wanted
Wait,
to
has
ask.
anybody else come in since we read that?
Yes, but they did leave.
No.
Any
No one
ex
here.
parte conflicts or bias on this
None.
for anyone to declare?
None.
Okay. So yes, this motion, when we noticed the application, we failed to send an email notification to various agencies, which we are required to do. So because of that, we'll need to continue this. We are proposing to continue it to a date certain of July 11th. January's kind of far.
Okay.
I think you're
July
running into
11th.
some clock issues on
Do we have a
that.
motion?
I'll motion to
I have
continue.
a question.
Mhm.
What is the, since there isn't a real staff report yet, may I ask, what constitutes their request? Are they having sewer issues, or they need sewer? That's why
It is
they're
not a sewer annexation.
station, okay.
It is just a typical annexation. When you see it,
I saw the map.
on July, well, it's going to be the first one under the new rules where it will go. We will look at the same criteria that we did before. There's these factors that have to be demonstrated. But if they do demonstrate that before the Planning Commission and the City Commission, there is no vote. So this is the first one of the no vote. So if some annexations comply with certain criteria, which we believe this one does, then it doesn't require that subsequent vote.
Is it quasi-judicial in nature, the
Looks like
review
they
of
would
this
do a partition.
request?
As he say.
Well, so it will
Do
still
they have
require
two
approval by a Planning
No,
Commission
they
and
have
City Commission.
access to Hazel,
I'm not
what's
sure
this, Hazelnut
technically if we
nut
call
or
it
hut or whatever
quasi-judicial
that-
or not, but I'll find out for you.
Okay, but the house fronts on Column.
In other words, would it come under our zoning ordinance, or would it come under our comp plan, which is legislative, as I understand
It's a
it?
large lot, they partition it, you could have a house
Quasi-judicial.
there with access.
I think it's quasi-judicial.
Yeah,
Oh,
because
thank
you're,
you.
yeah, you're applying the pieces of the code in discretionary way for interpretation. Even though, because like, with the annexations I do before the council, most of the time council sees legislative events, but this is an unusual time when they see a quasi-judicial review of something. But, yeah, that's the way we classify them anyway.
So do we have a
believe
motion
it's
for the
same.
continuance?
Chair, I would motion we continue Planning Commission file 16-066 to a date certain of July 11th.
Second.
All right. Commissioner Mahoney?
Aye.
Commissioner Henkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Espy?
Aye.
Commissioner Maybe?
Aye.
Commissioner McGriff?
Aye.
Commissioner Guile?
Aye.
Chair Kidwell?
Aye.
Motion passes.
So we have a presentation for Equitable Housing Grant update.
All right. So last we met about equitable housing was on May 10th when we had our joint work session with the City Commission to discuss equitable housing issues. At that work session, we heard a lot about, from the Clackamas County, about issues relating to equitable housing. So, first off, I wanted to give you an update on what's going on. Equitable housing is defined as diverse, quality, physically accessible, affordable housing choices with access to opportunities, services, and amenities. So that means a lot of things. It could mean housing prices, it could mean housing locations, it could mean ones that are address ADA requirements, things like that.
Or
So-
it could mean yes.
What's that?
Or it could mean yes.
There
It
you
means
go.
all of the above.
All of the above. That is true. So the city needs to look at equitable housing. It is a big topic with lots of facets. We're moving to address this one step at a time. This first step that we're taking is to apply for a grant. We've submitted a pre-application for a grant with Metro. It is the Equitable Housing Planning and Development Grant. The grant request is for $80,000 and then $8,000 of in-kind services from the staff. We are teaming up with a variety of organizations and businesses to apply for the grant. And before I get to what we're actually applying for, we are applying with Clackamas County Health, Housing, and Human Services, or H3S, Northwest Housing Alternatives, the Citizen Involvement Committee, our Community Development Department, Stakeholders Group, Main Street Oregon City Chamber of Commerce, and Oregon City Business Alliance are all supporting us in our efforts as well. So what we hope to do is to get a collective of a advisory team, and that advisory team will look through our processes as well as our development code standards and identify opportunities to remove barriers to equitable housing and also add incentives to an equitable housing. Beyond that, there will be likely a large part of that project will be adoption of amended standards to our code. So this is where we would be changing our code, but under the grant we probably couldn't sneak in food carts to this. But so likely we will be doing a code amendment process to make sure our standards are clear and we don't have conflicting standards. Not saying that we would compromise what our standards are or not, but we want to really take a look at what are the barriers for housing and make sure that we identify ways in which we can improve and get better. There's a big component to this grant in addition to removing barriers and adding incentives, and that is education. So what we've proposed is that we hire a consultant and we create guides and processes to bridge the gap between the government and the public that want to do things. So one of the topics that we would like to have an educational outreach on is ADUs. So we would like to have an application process that identifies from very start to very finish, so including all the development processes, SDCs, all of those forms, what your expected costs are, how you start to move through and hire a contractor, then do this, then do that. So really walk through what it is like to do an ADU. In addition, for ADU specifically, our grant proposal includes hiring someone to create 2 ADU designs, and those designs will go before, they'll be approved by planning and by our building department, so we could do, nearly over-the-counter review for those. So you could take these free plans for this accessory dwelling unit, put them in your backyard, and here's the plans. We do a quick process, so that will be a nice opportunity to accelerate accessory dwelling units. So that's the ADU, yes.
I guess my big thing is I got an issue with ADUs. It's an accessory dwelling unit. It's a tiny house. Not under the quote tiny house, but
Could be.
It's a house.
So
Therefore, why aren't the properties being partitioned, and why aren't they be given an address, and why don't they have to do SDCs, and why are they?
They have to do SDCs.
I'm just,
They do
why
SDCs.
aren't they just houses? I mean, this whole, let's call them an ADU. Well, okay, I remodeled my garage. Now it's not a garage; it's a house. So it should be. I mean, I'm just this whole it just seems like a way to sneak in a backyard partition without having to do any of the work for it.
I appreciate the point of view. There are a lot of standards for accessory dwelling units. So our code in general, some of the bookends are that you can't rent both of the units out. You have to live in one of them for a certain number of months per year. You put a deed restriction on your title. The ADU can't be larger than 800 square feet or 50% of the square footage of the home. So there is some proportion scale built into our code. You still have our 40% lot coverage and things like
But they're a
that.
separate independent living unit.
Uh-huh.
So what if you're in a zoning district that only allows single-family dwellings? An ADU would make that quote-unquote a duplex.
Or
No,
multifamily.
ADUs are permitted in every zoning designation that allows for single-family homes in Oregon City. So you have a single-family home, you can have an ADU.
So
So-
then that makes it a duplex lot then.
No, it's its own separate unit, so it complies with certain standards. So like duplexes, we don't have standards on how big they can be, and you would have to be in a zoning designation for duplex.
But
So
if-
they're more accessory, so there's a lot of limitations on them to keep
Yeah,
them
so the
at
size.
accessory
So-
levels.
But if I build an ADU and that becomes my house, and then I Airbnb my house for $45,000 a year, and I take that $45,000 a year and I go live in Florida because I don't like Oregon weather, then why is that not a business and or a hotel?
We don't allow Airbnb. You need a conditional use to rent out anything less than 30 days. So yes, if you had one unit that you wanted to rent out for a minimum of 30 days, you could do that. If you wanted to rent it out for less than 30 days, you need a conditional use from Planning Commission.
Did you just say that in reverse?
No, if it's less than 30 days, then you need a special
Conditional
permit.
use.
If it's more than 30 days, you're just renting your house.
Uh-huh.
So it's like anybody else.
So I only see one teeny tiny little flaw in having a stock plan, because then we end up with those, forgive me, there's a couple of stock plan for those skinny houses, and you go all over Portland and everything looks the same. It's just hideous. And I don't think having a stock plan will work for the conservation or historic districts, because we have specific design standards that these may or not meet. So I don't think that should be, they may be, out in Rivercrest, you could build your 2 different designs, but I don't think it'll work in McLaughlin or Kanema, because we have approved some additional units, but they are, they meet all the requirements for those particular districts, and they're obviously more stringent than what would be allowed under regular design review.
So you would still have to go through the required review for the historic districts. You're right, massing and scale.
Yeah, so
Right.
somebody say, well, look, I've got the plan that's approved by the city, and I want to build it in the McLaughlin Conservation District, but it doesn't meet the standards.
Yep. I agree.
So I see that as a little,
So some may work on some
Right.
properties, but not all.
and so you need to put that little disclaimer like we have on some other things.
So that is one option. The other one is documenting our processes for site plan design review to build multifamily, or for partitioning to subdivide your property. Cottage housing, what are our standards, the complete process, fees, sort of what are you in for if you're going to go through these processes. We have a lot of processes that we allow, like ADUs and cottage housing, that nobody builds. So there's a little bit of that we're missing something. We don't really know what it is that we're missing.
I encourage you to go take a look at the Belushi Pavilion over in Malheur University,
It was nice.
which is the Belushi
Oh,
Pavilion
yes, okay.
over in Malheur University. It is a really, really good example of an EDU type of small, very functional kind of house, where it starts in the kitchen and then radiates out into the dining room and then the living room and then the bedroom in kind of a square Archimedean spiral with a
Well,
slanted
didn't
roof.
They moved that building.
They did.
They deconstructed it.
Yeah,
and
Tim
rebuilt
Mather
it.
saved it from
Yeah, they
from
rebuilt it
from being demolished.
Yeah.
What do you think the
Then
square footage on that is?
It's 750 square feet, and it's got everything. I mean, of course, you can't really reproduce everything that's, but the concept of it is incredible. There's lots of glass. It's open. There's a lot of room in it. It's really amazing. Anyway,
That's
This is
great.
on the
I urge you to go take a look.
Reed
It's
College
over,
Made a
it's
note.
over on the Merrillhurst
Oh.
campus.
Merrillhurst, okay.
Yeah, they're using it as a kind of a little pavilion for architectural students.
I
and
would
things
sincerely
like that.
hope that we avoid,
Yeah.
lessons learned, we avoid the problems that Portland is having right
That's
now
good.
with ADUs.
Pretty cool.
It's like every
Yeah.
other day, there's
Really
something in the paper about somebody building something that, number one, the community is upset about, number two, it doesn't meet any standards, and number three, some of them are just, let me just say it, butt ugly. And
Well,
people are,
and my concern is that if it can go in under the radar and doesn't get the attention that a new regular building would get,
Right.
that all of a sudden something's going up in your neighbor's backyard and you're thinking, is that a storage shed?
yeah, I think there's gotta be notice, and I think there's gotta be an opportunity for people to look at this, because again, let's say somebody on the other side of your fence, all of a sudden, boom, there's a building there.
But there's a,
Just
is there a
real-
notice for a manufactured home? Because people hate those too.
Just real quick though, this was about our equitable housing grant, and ADUs are already in our code, so
Yeah.
Right.
we're going
Right.
to have to hammer ADUs at some other point.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I-
I'm sorry I brought up my
Good one.
objections
Yeah.
the way I did, but
My question on
Laura
this
started
equitable housing grant, and I think it's great that we're studying it, but my biggest concern and question for you is, I guess I'll make a statement and let you react to it. I hope we're not going down the road that City of Portland is looking at going down with inclusionary housing, because that is, in my estimation, a really bad road to go down.
Could you explain what that means?
Inclusionary housing is where you essentially require a developer to include a certain percentage of affordable housing within any development that
Oh,
they do.
right. Yeah, they do that in
And
California.
they're talking about implementing that at the end of this year in City of Portland. And I've already heard feedback from developers who are saying if that goes into effect, they will be doing business outside of the City of Portland.
Please don't
And
bring
that
them
would be
here.
the quickest way of shutting down any kind of multifamily development, even subdivisions in Oregon City, if that was the direction we go in. And I would really discourage going that direction.
So that is a good point, and so what we're going to do is put together a team of people to look at this. So we've started to identify who will sit on this team, including members of the public and the development community and various groups who've done this before, things like that. So what we want to do is when we review our code and review our standards and processes, that if we were to propose any changes, that those make sense, and that those are well supported. If we do change our code, by the way, it would go as a legislative file before Planning Commission and City Commission as well, so there would be a long opportunity for public input
And this is if funded.
if funded. So if funded, we'll know July 1st if we receive an invitation to apply. So the pre-app was just sort of a letter of interest. They'll read it, and if it looks like it will work enough and it's in line with what their grant is, then they'll ask us to apply. That application will be due in August. If approved, then that work would be done over 2017. You'll be looking at probably a fairly lengthy adoption process at the end of that too. So it'll be a while before you'll see any actual changes.
I'd like to echo what Charles said, is that I know that this is now the, as I like to call it, the yogurt stands of planning. And we need to do this. If we do this, we need to do it right. Let's not rush to judgment and just adopt something because Metro says, oh, here, we're dangling money in front of you. We really need to craft whatever it is the equitable housing is to fit our community and not what fits the metro area. It's got to work here for us to make it work. And so whatever they do in West Lynn might not work in Oregon City, and whatever they do in Portland might not work in Oregon City. And I just wanted us to, like we're doing with the Lambert Falls Legacy Project, we get one good shot to do it right. Let's go slow, let's be deliberate, and let's move towards whatever that community desire is. Because again, as Charles keeps bringing up over time, we need to make this work in Oregon City. We need to have it have an Oregon City stamp and a brand so it looks like our community, works in our community, and we just don't get the one size fits all. I don't want the one size to fit all to work for here.
Well, and I just say, I know Metro has an agenda, and at the presentation
They
we
can
heard,
appreciate it.
I heard in between the lines that they were talking about exactly what I'm suggesting as a concern. And same thing with the Clackamas County Housing Authority. They were specifically talking about doing that. And I think if it's voluntary, that's fine. But if we
Or
codify it,
incentivized, yeah.
if we codify it and make it a requirement, which is what the city of Portland is talking about doing, I think there are some really negative unintended results that can come out of that. So I'm okay if we provide incentives and we say it's voluntary. But if we make it a requirement that you have to go down that road, I think there could be some terrible unintended results for the city. And the developers I've talked to said that they believe that the unintended result for the city of Portland may be that there's a gap of about 2 or 3 years of virtually no development at all, and going from a flood of new housing to just nothing for about 2 or 3 years until they revert.
Well, let's not let us forget that certain construction-related industries have an agenda. And that's not our agenda. That's, again, what I'm talking about,
Right.
is that I respect those groups, but we should not be getting beat over the head by them to force something here that may or may not work for Oregon City.
Exactly.
Going through all of these standards and some suggestions for things that they were kind of saying would work well towards lending an opportunity of housing within cities, we actually do almost everything except for inclusionary. So, you know, our code right now is pretty good. I think it's just a little complicated, and this process is a little confusing. So it will be really nice to add transparency and clarity to our processes, grab a group of various parties to look at what we do and how we do it to see if we can make it better and more streamlined. I think there's really a lot of opportunity coupling with this grant, because our standards are really good. I mean, we allow such a variety of housing opportunities and mixed-use zoning designations. For example, we don't have a minimum square footage for each unit. So you could put a lot of units into mixed use if you want to. It's just nobody does it. So our code is actually really progressive in a lot of ways. So I don't know how much of it we would be changing. It's unclear. The format for sure we probably would change because it's a little confusing. But that will be great because it will add clarity to the public and to anyone looking at our code to really figure out where those standards are and where the conflicts are. So either way, we're not obligated to make any specific changes to our code if we take the money. But I think we're actually pretty good now. It's just people don't know we could do cottage housing or ADUs, or, you know, there's something going on there.
Well, I think Paul hit the nail on the head when he said, you know, there's a lot of education that could be done. And until we talked about the ADUs, I didn't even know that was in our code.
The other thing we need to be really careful about, that's another pitfall that's happened to the city of Portland. They've created some of these committees, and I don't know if, again, you've been reading, because I do a lot of reading, is that we have people who are sitting on a lot of those committees that the city has for dealing with these sort of issues, and they have a vested interest, and there's been no declaring of conflicts or the fact that, oh, by the way, I own this property and I think that, you know, the height should be. So we just need to watch that. I don't, again, we've already had our neighbors to the north show us all the bad things that we don't want to do, and so that I'm grateful for that. They're blazing the trail.
What are you saying?
Yeah.
So as you look at to develop the team, I would just encourage that we incorporate like a community-based organization or someone that's building and working with the community and doing affordable housing. And you mentioned building a couple ADUs. That immediately makes me think of Clackamas Community College and those couple of little model homes that they've built. But I could see it being rather neat to have them build the ADUs, and I'm sure they'd be able to do it and be a neat lesson for their team.
She was talking about creating a building plan for the ADUs. You didn't say build. I heard you say 2 plans that people could use, and then they'd go over the counter and da 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 da.
But
Plans, but that is a great idea for creating synergy. to
you
understand.
didn't say build a couple. Okay, I
No, sorry.
She,
said-
she,
I
she
was-
said,
Plans.
she said,
The plans.
she said build plans for. So she kind of,
Gotcha,
But I
gotcha.
like your idea.
well, and in
I-
fact, it's useful because like the high school construction class
Same thing.
and all that. I mean, the smaller buildings are things that, I mean, when I was in high school, that's what they did. They got a grant and they bought a piece of property and they built a house and then they sold it and they used that money and bought, and that was every year's project for the construction class. And, they got, electricians to come in and they acted like apprentices and plumbers and sheetrockers and it was a big deal. And they've got 50 people in that construction class.
I
So
talked to the high
Wow,
school
wow.
guy about doing that. He wasn't that interested.
Well,
I only made bookends.
But it's also, if,
Yeah.
if we're talking about an ADU, which is
Yeah,
700
smaller.
square foot rather than a mansion,
Yeah,
you know.
there are definitely opportunities here.
Mhm.
So,
I think that one of the things we've got to be careful about is thinking that we're going to approach this in a vacuum. Because the housing does not end at the city limits of Oregon City. And what we need is information. We need some good applicable information. And that doesn't end at the city limits of Oregon City. We've got to have some sort of an approach to this where we know the scope of this thing and how it affects Oregon City. And that goes beyond our city limits. Because let's say we had a model plan put together for this, and all of a sudden you've got a ton of people coming to Oregon City to take advantage of this plan. What if the plan applied across the board out to Forest Grove, out to Gresham, out to Wilsonville, and all this information was uniform, well, not uniform, but it was gathered together so that all the communities could look at it and see where they fit into the scheme of things. I have yet to see a comprehensive study on the housing stock of the city of Oregon City in terms of age and condition and location, on and on and on. And if that applied to every community in the metropolitan area here, we'd all be on the same page. I don't want to see Oregon City go off half-cocked on this thing. I'd like to see information that all the cities shared and say, where do we fit in so that we can share in the solution to this? Because folks, you know as well as I do, 25 years from now, this community is going to look a heck of a lot different than it does now. And the people that are going to make political decisions and sit where we are right now are 15-year-old kids right now, and their values are certainly different than ours, and they're making $200,000 a year, and they don't give a rip about living on 20,000 square foot. They want to be mobile. They want to be carefree. They want to do. I don't know what they want to do because their values are different than mine. But I think the idea is good. I just don't want to see us operate in a vacuum and think that we've got the problem solved. But because we don't, the problem extends throughout the Portland metropolitan region, and they've got to share in the solution. And I think the only people that could organize a task force to take this on so that everybody shared in the same information would be Metro. And I can't understand why they're not doing it.
Well, Bob, I appreciate your point of view, but I think the worst thing that could happen to Oregon City is for us to hand over decision-making process to
No, I'm
Metro.
not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting that we get the information on a comprehensive view. And I think the only people that could generate that information is Metro. I don't think that we're going to be able to generate, we'll do it locally, but we won't be able to do it regionally.
It'll usually depend on the local jurisdictions to come up with that information.
They reproduce it. Yeah, and then they reproduce it.
Well, even
They'll give us a grant to do all the Metroscope, to generate their Metroscope numbers,
Are we gonna be able to do that?
and
Even
build
if
a
Metro-
$80,000?
all that.
Even if
Right.
Metro has an involvement, I still think we want to, as a city, maintain control of this city's character. I don't think we want to emulate any of the other cities in the Metro region just because we all agree that there's a housing issue that needs to be resolved.
No, well, I think what he's saying is, we want to make it easy for, if we get a great idea, for them to emulate us.
Yeah, but,
Just turn it on them.
yeah.
You
But-
see, I want to keep decision-making at the local level. I think government at the local level is more effective, and it keeps your electorate satisfied and they're in control.
Well, see, I agree 100% with what you just said. I just don't want to see us advocating our responsibility of local control to Metro or some other regional.
No, I think what everybody's saying is we're more than willing for Metro to put gas in the tank, but we're still driving the car.
That's it.
Exactly,
That's
absolutely.
it.
And I also don't want us to go down the path of.
Damon, that's great. Politically, that's great. But I'll tell you who's driving the car. It's the economy.
Yeah.
And
Now,
it's
they're
driving
in the
it.
road.
Yeah?
We've just got to decide whether
Well,
they're going to go off-road.
we can't even
or
fix our
pavement.
roads. You know, but it's the economy, and I don't say that loosely.
Bring it to rest.
I mean that sincerely, because it takes money to run this city, and we're going in the hole.
So Laura, have we exhausted this topic this evening?
Yes, the last thing I wanted to say was that Commissioner Mahoney introduced the last part of this grant very well, in that we were taking these model standards and how-to guides and sharing them with the metro jurisdictions or other jurisdictions within the state. So ideally, we could create a template that could be recreated in other places to
Yeah,
provide
I think Zach
transparency and
introduced that
clarity.
thought, but that's a great thought. If we could just expand on it, is for us to introduce a model. And if we can do that without
Compromise.
without getting at each other's throats, because this is an emotional thing. It really is. I could see it coming. You know, not everybody's going
It's
to
complicated.
be as relaxed about this as I am.
Right, I just would hate to see us think we're the engine and find out we're the caboose.
Well, I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, you mean the one that went off the rails?
I love how these
That's all I can
examples.
say.
All right, that's it for the
Okay,
housing
so
grant.
let's move on to the fabulous new city website.
That doesn't
All right.
have our meetings on it.
So as you may have noticed, www.orcity.org has a new face. So it got a facelift at the end of last week
Looks nice.
or the week before. Thank you. There
Although
was
the picture is nothing that belongs to Oregon City. There's the county courthouse and the state bridge, but other than that,
so one thing is that on every page, so this new website is new and it can be buggy because it's new. And it was a big project. There was a community advisory team that was created, an internal staff advisory team that was created to work out the design of the website, which buttons and functions are where. So it's gone through a very long, thorough public vetting process. But that being said, sometimes there are things that come up. So on every page on the right-hand side, there's this feedback button. Any feedback is good feedback. We want to make sure that we get it right, and sometimes, you know, when you do a new thing, you got to tweak it around a little bit before it is right. So this is the new website. It is it has the same amount of information as the last website. Hopefully now it's easier to find. So here's the buttons at the top. There's community, and so you're going to find a lot of resources there. Under community, you'll find our staff directory, where our offices are, different ways to explore neighborhood associations, things like that. We have a business and development tab. So this gets a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of economic development, some planning stuff. Under planning and land use, you can go into some mapping, have access to our historic information, application form, zoning code, that sort of thing. There's a building section, so you could have a direct link to apply for inspections online. There's our bid page for contractors, and then we link to our community partners as well. Under the government tab, we list all the boards and committees on the right-hand side, but Planning Commission sits with the City Commission under the City Government tab, because we recognize your importance over here. We have a direct link to all of the city departments, and then all of our committees as well. Under the activities and recreation, you can look at both the community events as well as different services offered at the library and the rec center and different things like that.
Before you leave that page, could you go back to that page?
Mm-hmm.
I don't suppose, I don't see any, I was looking at this the other day. If I wanted to go down below, I see there's some lettering going below, but
Like Willamette Falls.
I mean, nothing on the side to take down in that white box.
Yeah, we need a scroll bar or and widen the.
This part where you
Yeah.
can't see
Yeah,
it.
I didn't know how much was below there, but there was no scroll bar on
Well,
the
you
on
can
the
see
right.
it underneath.
They
us there.
buried the burial records underneath the line.
Oh, I
I
see it.
I think that might have been
There it
on purpose.
I will. I'll make a note. Thank you.
Yeah, it's just that little tiny bit, so you don't necessarily need a scroll bar. You just need to make the
The
button
White
bigger.
part, you mean,
Way
right, the
bigger,
white
yeah.
part bigger.
Well, I didn't know if there was either.
But you can see a little bit.
Take your cursor and put, can you get to burial records the way it is right now? Sarah,
Sorry.
Laura, can you?
Whoa.
Whoa,
No,
whoa.
you can't.
This mouse. Yes.
Yeah, you can, but you can't, I mean, if you,
hard to
you know,
see.
you
It's
can see
creepy.
it.
It's hard to
so-
see.
There you go.
And then the other thing is that if you click on the city seal, just like our old website, it'll always take you right back
It's
home.
the city logo.
City logo
Yeah.
will always take you back. So
Difference.
last tab is my favorite tab, which is How Do I, and I think that it is a nice, quick reference.
Yeah, and there's some more beyond.
More, yeah.
How do I
Um,
apply for EVADD traffic school?
Yeah, that's new.
And you also have information below the white box on that one.
Yeah.
Oh, staff directory requests.
Utility start stop
Yeah.
service.
So we started off this evening talking about where the calendar is, and somehow I'm not seeing it on here.
It's down below.
So there's a couple things that I would assume that you're going to want to find on our website. I'll go over where those are located. So under municipal code is always a good one, but I think everybody has that memorized by now, right?
Absolutely.
OC Web Maps is another good one to look at our mapping system. You can do an online search of our records if you want to. But this public meeting tabs here,
meetings.
you can find it in various places. It's under government
So click on it.
as
It-
well.
Now, it doesn't say meetings and agendas, so
No.
I guess that was what threw me off. Is
Yeah.
I was
Yes.
looking for the tab that
And
said
a lot of people out there are going to
Agendas.
look for that.
So click on it. What does it say?
So if you click on it, it'll take a second, but it goes to
The Registrar page.
this.
Oh, there are.
Yeah, it's
Right.
right there.
Right.
What you're
It's the
used
exact
to
same
seeing.
page.
And this is what I've been used to looking for, and so this afternoon when I looked, I couldn't find this page because I didn't know to look under city meetings.
I got a
for
404 when
Yeah.
I did it.
File not
Oh,
found.
you did?
Yeah.
What's
Okay,
the 404?
so-
File not found.
I
Oh,
will
wow.
do two things. One is I'll update that email that I send out to lead the path of where you click on How Do I and what the title is called if you want to go to it directly. And then I'll double check that. The problem is when we got the new website, a lot of the old links
Yeah.
became
What
broken.
I did is I went through government, planning commission, I think. I hit planning commission
Mornings are still.
and went for the agenda that way.
Okay.
And so that's the path that I went through, and it didn't work.
So
Now we're
let me just make one comment as I'm looking at this is
Okay. Well,
I think all of your tabs are pretty self-explanatory with the exception of the How Do I.
Yes.
And when I saw that tab, that was like,
I think it's.
it didn't mean anything to me. And it seems like it wants to say something more like information. You know, like, how do I find information or something? And I know you want it to be
Information about.
smart and catchy, so somebody else will have to think of something a little bit more
Well, maybe
smart
you
and
just
catchy,
did.
but-
You used the word find. How do I
But,
find?
yeah, it's that,
Find it.
how do I, is like, what does that mean? And I didn't even click on that tab. I was looking, like Paul said, under government, and I'm trying to find, where's the agenda?
Mhm.
Yeah, that's there's two things I would point out on this. First off, you don't have a search function.
There is right here.
Okay, you have it.
I was just covering it, sorry.
Secondly, if you click on View Calendar under Upcoming Events,
Mm-hmm.
just click that. Randy.
I don't think she clicked it over.
No, she did. It was
Okay,
great.
it just-
And then you scroll down.
Scroll down to today's day.
One second, I'm
It's-
scrolling and
it's-
it's not scrolling.
Yeah,
Just give it a
it's
minute.
taking a second.
It's thinking, it's
It's
thinking.
a little slow. So
The
it,
squirrels are tired.
Who updates this so far?
the city website or the calendar or which
Hey
part?
Bob, on Friday, there was a first Friday fun swim. You missed it.
It's
Did I?
Yeah. I missed it too, because you didn't call me.
I waited.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry.
so this website
forgot.
I
and
think
updating the.
you just overloaded the system.
Oh dear! Now it's now the computer's
Now it's
melding on
frozen.
me.
Yep, now it's
Yeah,
freezing.
frozen.
Okay.
Well, what I was going to point out with that is that when you click on a lot of these events on the calendar, they pop up with a thing that says regularly scheduled event, second Thursday of whatever. They don't tell you anything about the event. They just say it's a regularly scheduled event every third Thursday or whatever. So first, we clearly haven't tabbed the calendar to have the regular scheduled event on the second Monday, but it's kind of, the calendar is useful for, oh, there's that thing that I already know what it
If you know what you're
is.
looking for.
But there doesn't seem to be any follow-on data when you click on the various events, other than to say it happens every week, or
So that's a good point.
and it might just be that because it's new, people haven't had time to go back and start filling in the data, but it's if you
Doesn't give you the.
because like I clicked on like the
not
city
enough
commission.
definition.
Or no, I clicked on our next meeting, the fourth one, and it just said regularly scheduled event, fourth Monday of every month.
Didn't list the name
That
of the
was
event.
it. Well, it said planning
Oh,
commission.
Planning Commission.
7 p.m. And then it didn't even say where; it just said 7 p.m.
Okay.
And regularly scheduled event, fourth Monday of every month.
So I'll make sure that it includes a direct link to the page that we were just looking at, to this page with
Yeah.
the packet, so you can get the agenda at each one. So we may not update each meeting each time, but it'll automatically point you in the right direction.
I always use your links to go right there.
Is there an agenda out there for the 27th yet?
No, but I
It's
can
not.
tell you what's on it under my updates. I have a list. I'm going to tell you what's coming up.
When we
But
get to,
wait,
we're not to
In-
communications yet.
I think.
So the last thing on this this website that I want to show you that is new, it is a little bit buggy still, but it's really great. Under the How Do I tab or the Information tab, it's this City Projects is what it's called. And what this is a map. And it's a map of development applications, of capital projects. So there's various things. So you can filter for land use applications in 2016, whatever. Once you start zooming in, there's actually a lot of things on the map. And this is where you're going to find land use notices. So you can now find land use notices via map. And isn't this exciting? It's going to be up not just during the comment period, but it's going to be
So
up
exciting.
through the I am, right? Through the close of the project. So because people will say what happened because it fell off the map or whatever because we have a staff report. But maybe the building's not built yet and you start to see some bulldozers going on site and you want to know what's going on. So this will stay there until it's closed. So it will be up through a comprehensive process, and on them too it has a so you can click on
Yes, I just saw the notice of land use section when I was at the Safeway Shopping Center, and I said, "Oh, what's DP 1602?"
So it'll tell you that it's in the
Right
comment
here.
period. It'll tell you what it's doing. It gives you the complete application forms. Once we get a staff report, we'll throw the staff report on there. So it's good. And we're really working hard for our meeting agendas to give a good description of what each item is, and we're also doing that on our notices and here as well. So instead of just DP 1602, which could
Saw that.
maybe not mean a whole lot to anyone that's not in the planning division, it's detailed development plan for single-story retail building and located at the Hilltop Shopping
Sounds
Center.
like a-
So we're being descriptive
Sounds like
more.
a fast food restaurant.
No, it's not. There's no drive-through or anything. It's just retail. So it's 3 spaces.
It
But
says you voted for it.
Maybe it's hot wings.
the point is that it's all accessible. It's all at your
Chick-fil-A.
fingertips, and it's all on a map, and so it'll be easy to find.
Two things.
Right.
Yes.
One, you didn't capitalize Warner and Milne.
Oh my God.
Uh,
Jeez, Laura, what are you thinking?
No, that's I can't change that.
Well, who did develop it? Was it done outside, and then you each took your responsibility for your areas?
They had a committee.
It is a long story.
It's
Well,
I mean, there was
the-
that plus the other way
you
and
put
every
a lot of
other
work
way.
into it, you can really tell.
The other,
Yes,
the-
that- I can't change that address, but I wish I could capitalize Warner and Milne. It's in the system.
so you need to.
It's a bug.
Beat up the system.
Yeah.
It's
The
a-
other,
yeah.
the other thing that I think would be useful under the city projects thing, would be paving.
So I don't
And-
know.
You know, and it wouldn't be every paving, but you know, the city has their paving plan, and even if it's just, you know, city projects, and you have like paving, and then it goes,
Capital improvement.
it goes click, and it takes you off to the paving notice thing.
There it is, right there.
But that's not all the paving.
So here's your paving
Maintenance.
maintenance stuff, and then also your 2016 roadway
Right there.
projects.
They
So
were going
you
around
can
with
start to see
some
more of
tar and
it,
a
and
black
you can
hose
filter.
and spraying it all over the
That's
system.
that's crack seal.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had to make sure I did not step in it to get it out of my shoes.
Yeah, crack sealing is. We just bought that machine.
Good job on it.
2000.
Yeah, a lot of work by a lot of people.
Takes a lot of time. These take
You don't have tickets issued.
That's just bad.
They're actually supposed to
Tickets,
have-
we should, right? See where all the
It's a
speeders
public
are,
information,
and there
yeah.
you go.
What to look for, where not to go.
There you go. There's the patrol districts are under the mapping.
Thank you,
See
Laura.
that?
I assume we're talking about it's a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
I'd say, but it's an active work in progress now.
Thank you for your work so far on this.
Thank you. As always, we want to improve on everything that we do, so if you see any opportunities, let us know.
Hit the feedback button. And
See, I finally
feedback.
just learned, I finally get the hang of the old site because I use it all the time and now, you know.
Yep, that's
now
it.
you
right.
learn something new.
Good
Just
for your brain.
trying to keep you on your toes.
all of our
So,
brains.
any bad links or anything, let us know. We'll fix it right up.
Okay, so communications.
Okay, so for communications, a couple of things. One is that we've had a lot of meetings lately, and there's been a lot of good information at various meetings, and I wanted to point you to those meetings if you wanted to watch them on our website. We had at our Natural Resource Committee meeting, John Runyon from the Portland Harbor gave a good speak on the Willamette Falls project. So there's a project to look at the water quality from downtown Portland to the falls, and to look at how to make it better. And he gave it quite a detailed talk to our Natural Resource Committee, and that is a good meeting to watch if you would like to. The other one is that the OLCC came and spoke on June 7th to the City Commission at a work session. Very informative about what the packaging requirements are and the regulation process for mainly recreational marijuana. So every detail that they regulate, it's very, very interesting. It's not really related to some of the marijuana stuff we're doing, but just good knowledge to have in the back of your head about how exactly they regulate people walking into the store, or not advertising to children, or having covering on their windows, that kind of thing. It's really interesting to hear some of those
Is
details.
that work session available? We had a Park Place meeting that night, so I missed the meeting. Is it available on Granicus still? I
It
guess?
is.
Okay.
Yes. And then the last item of business before I get to the agenda items that are coming up soon are that we're having interviews for the community development director, and we need one volunteer from the planning commission to sit on the interview panel. And it will likely be June 27th and June 28th, which is a Monday and a Tuesday, 2 weeks from today.
I'd like to do that.
that
I nominate Bob to do it.
Second, all in favor?
all right? So I'll give you
All in
contact
favor?
I'd like
information.
to be the backup in case he gets hit by a bus or some other thing.
Didn't I see you driving a bus the other day?
No, you did not see me driving a bus.
Her windows were tinted.
All right.
Thank you, Bob.
So Commissioner Mahoney with Commissioner McGriff as the backup. I'll give you contact information to contact our Human Resources Director.
Whose position is this?
Tony's old position.
Okay.
So there's the Community Development Director position will be filled, and then so I'm interim manager until that position is filled. So more to come on that. The next item of business is what you guys are going to be doing in the next coming months. So it's summer, and I don't think you guys are going to get a break for a little bit. We have some agenda items coming up before you. So the next meeting is June 27th. We will have before you a legislative process for a Type 1 site plan design review. We've already done a work session on it a while back. You'll start to see this will be the actual implementation of it. It'll go before you, then the City Commission. So it's looking at doing a quicker, easier process for minor tweaks to commercial buildings. Then you'll also, on that date, hear the development strategy and a Riverwalk update for the Willamette Falls Legacy Project. We have a lot more meat and potatoes to tell you what we've been up to and what our process is moving forward. And then the last one is also on that date. You're going to
Will
have
it be given by staff or be given by one of the consultants?
I don't know for sure. I think it's both. Christina is the lead of the development strategy, and I think that she will be here. I think there might be another person here with that as well. I assume it's both. Then there'll be a work session on marijuana, so you'll get to look at the first crack of the development standards for marijuana. Oh dear, that was terrible. So the first draft of the standards for marijuana. So as you know, we had a open house. We'll have another open house, but we've had a lot of community engagement on our website with polls and things like that for what type of standards we ought to adopt. So now we've written those standards, and you'll get to sort of look at those before they go for the adoption process. So that's in 2 weeks on June 27th. Then on July 11th, which is the week after 4th of July, you'll see the Type 1 site plan design review. If it takes a couple hearings, that may be back. You'll see this annexation for Columbine, which you continued, Columbine Court. And then you'll also see a site plan design review, geologic hazards, natural resource, and variance for a retaining wall for Berry Hill Apartments. So right above Forest Edge Apartments, right, there's this landslide in December. There's about $1 million retaining wall that they're proposing, but it doesn't comply with our wall height standards, so they need a variance from the Planning Commission for that. But there's some environmentally sensitive areas back there, so there's also those geologic hazards, natural resource that go with that as well. So it might be a busy meeting then.
When they make that application for variance, is that over the staff's recommendation for go back and do it over again? Or they haven't complied with our standards, right?
Yeah, because our standards at any one point maximize the maximum retaining wall height that you can have is 8.5 feet, and then you have to step back 2 feet, and then you can go up to 8.5 feet, and then you step back 2 feet, so it breaks up large wall massings, and
they
want
haven't
to-
they haven't met those standards,
that's correct.
and so they're coming to us to.
So they've proposed, they've taken our variance criteria, which identify sort of why they ought to be able to do it when other people can't, and what sort of mitigation they're giving for that. So it's kind of in the back of the site, and there's some materials and plantings and landscaping.
Is
So.
the Natural Resources Committee going to be taking a look at this at all?
Is the natural resource, they have been notified of it.
Okay, so they've been notified, that's good.
Yeah, so they get notified of all land use applications. And then, so that's July 11th, and then on July 25th, you'll see the actual code for the implementation for marijuana. So your work session is next in 2 weeks, and then a month later, you'll see the code come back.
What was the date on that one?
July 25th. So that's June 27th, July 11th, and July 25th. You're going to be kind of busy. And so, you know, if things take multiple hearings, it's going to kind of roll over to the next one too. So I was hoping to get you guys a break for the summer, maybe in August.
There's no rest for the wicked.
There you go.
Yeah.
I will not be at the July 25th. I'll be in Alaska.
All right.
I will be.
For the variants and
Almost 11
whatnot, I
weeks.
think that that's going to be a fairly lengthy packet. If anybody else wants to join me in requesting the applicant provide us with additional information so we can read it, I would appreciate it.
What do you mean?
It's going to be very lengthy and a lot of stuff. Woo!
She
Thank
wants
you
a
for
physical packet, it sounds like,
Yeah.
instead of.
You want a print copy?
Yes.
We are not, so if
I
you
said-
want a plan, I could send you a plan. So all the information,
Well, yeah, but I can't print a plan on my home computer.
we're not allowed to print packets, and send them to you, but if there's a plan or something that's
No,
complicated.
I'd be happy to come up and get it and pay for it myself. I'm just letting you know ahead of time if
Oh,
it's
okay.
a big giant packet. I want a hard copy because I just can't read all that stuff online.
You're not allowed to now, you used to be, because I
Boy, I'll
remember
tell
we
you,
used
it's
to
hard
get
for
those.
me too.
Through the city recorder's office, there's a policy that we don't print packets, in
Anymore.
an effort to save paper and things like that, and better for the environment. So we don't print packets, but if there's like large complex plan set and you need us just to mail you a plan or something like that, that's a little bit different than a whole packet.
I'll save the city money and just come up and get it.
So
So I'll be missing the June 27th, I'll be just still on medications, coming out of surgery. But I wanted to know about the medical, about the marijuana one. If it does not get approved in November, are all these meetings and all the plans, is that all for naught, or is
Yes.
that? Okay, but you're just trying to be preemptive,
yes.
okay.
Likewise, I'll also be missing the 27th, unfortunately.
Okay, so this is a good reminder. If you're going to be gone any meetings, let us
June
know.
27?
So I have 2 out on the 27th, Commissioner Guile, Commissioner Henkin, and then also Commissioner may be out on the 25th. Okay. So anybody else that's going to be out, please let us know. That's it.
Just checking. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be gone.
Do you have a communication?
Yes.
Okay,
Very
it's your
brief.
turn.
Okay, I just want to let everybody know, I'm going to hand these out. Here's my latest project that I'm working on. On last Thursday, there was an announcement about the Veterans Memorial Coliseum, and so those of you that are familiar with that building,
Isn't that important?
yes, just some information about it. Just thought you might be interested in knowing, what I'm doing in my spare time when I'm not on the Planning Commission.
I get
So-
extra for
Yes,
the-
I have extra.
Okay,
So
thank
it's
you.
been designated a national treasure, which means the National Trust will be putting staff resources and some funding towards helping to save this building. Long story short, the cities of Portland has done a very good job in deferring maintenance on the building. So when they gave the press announcement on Thursday, there was a big barrel in the room where the water was dripping down from the leak that's in the roof.
Oh, of course. Yep. They probably had a bucket up there, but the drips.
Yeah, but there's things like the HVAC system needs to be fixed. I mean, there's just so much stuff but anyway.
Oh,
So
I'm
this
sure.
is a really good thing. So we actually have the first national treasure that was designated by the National Trust as Willamette Falls Locks in Oregon City. So I am also working on that project as well.
In
as-
Westland, you mean?
well, it's in Oregon City, Westland. So, and then if you want any of these really cool buttons, I brought all the cool buttons.
So
Yeah, $5 a piece.
No,
you
they
sell
are
them.
not.
I suggest you recruit Bill Walton to,
Bill Walton's already on board.
okay, good. Yeah.
They actually are talking to his people. He's already volunteered to.
Who's Bill Walton?
Bill Walton,
Oh, that guy that
Portland
sells
Tra-
shoes, or,
Portland
Right.
Trailblazer.
I remember
anyway,
meeting,
just thought I'd
interviewing
let you
Jim
know.
Morrison in the doors there.
So you can pass it down if
Awesome.
anybody else wants any.
We gotta get.
Nobody else wants
Okay,
any
any-
cool buttons?
have people.
Any other
Right, that's all I have.
communications? Are we done, Laura?